Welcome to the Intrinsic First Leadership Podcast. I'm Aaron Robbins with Intrinsic First. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date on our latest episodes. Ready to dive into the world of leadership? Let's get started. Thanks, everyone, for joining our Intrinsic First Leadership Podcast. We have a special guest, our first time having a guest on the podcast, Mr. Riley Jensen. And we're going to talk about his new book, Pure Unadulterated Guts. And so why don't we start out, Riley, do you mind doing kind of an introduction of yourself, a little bit about the book, and then we can kind of go from there?
Yeah, I'm Riley Jensen. I live in Salt Lake City, Utah. I am the lead mental performance coach for Utah State University and Weber State University. In the past, I have been the lead mental performance coach for Real Salt Lake, which is the pro soccer team here in Salt Lake City. And I work with, athletes from 52 years old down to 9 years old. And there's also a couple of really fun companies that I'm working with right now. I work with the Utah Jazz revenue department. I don't work with their athletes. And I work with a company called Legacy Power, which is a big, really almost global at this point, solar company, where we use a lot of the different things that we talk about in sports psychology, for business psychology, for corporate athletes, and for really anyone that's interested in chasing dreams and improving themselves, and that pursuit of daily improvement becomes a real focal point in what I do. I met Jimmy at a conference. It feels like 8 years ago. No, 9 years ago now.
Yes.
9 years ago now.
Was it ASP?
No, it was a local national university did their own sports psychology conference.
Okay.
And
we were both students at the time.
Yeah, we just kind of hit it off. My story has been an interesting one. I didn't go back to school till I was 40 years old. I'd walked through the doors of my old job with Stryker Medical, selling medical device, and my wife goes, "What in the world are you doing?" And I was like, "What did I do?" It wasn't even a bad day at work. It was just a day, right? And I go, "What do you mean? What am I doing?" And she goes, "You hate your job." And I'm like, "No, I don't. I'm making good money, hon. We're doing this, we're doing that, we're doing the other." We got 2 small kids. At the time, I had a 2-year-old and a newborn. And she goes, "Okay, tell me this. Do you want to work at your job in 5 years?" And I'm like, "Oh, hell no. Like, I do not want to work there." And she goes, "You hate your job. What are we going to do? We're just going to bounce around from terrible sales job to terrible sales job the rest of your life?" She goes, "I don't even know what it is that you want to do." And I'm like, "Yeah, you do." And she goes, "What?" And I'm like, "Sports psychology. I talk about it all the time." She goes, "Well, what have you done about it?" And I'm like, "Well, I didn't know that like quitting my job and going back to school was even an option, right?" Yeah. And she goes, "Well, you haven't put anything on my plate." She goes, "I'm not saying it is a possibility, but I'm not saying it's not." But she goes, "If I have to watch Riley Jensen gas face walk through that door one more time, this is not happiness."
Yeah.
So we put together a plan and it worked out. I was able to attend the University of Utah. I applied to Cal State Fullerton, the University of Utah, and those were like my 2 top choices. We got into the one here in Salt Lake City, and the rest is history. I really feel like I was called to do this, and I don't want to get too churchy or spiritual or anything like that, but I just feel like this is what I was born to do. And I feel like there's been some doors opened that I just didn't see happening, and it's just been an absolute delight for me to help other people chase their dreams, to be a little bit more relaxed, to be able to deal with stress and anxiety of their jobs, and to really just build confidence in themselves.
No, right on. It's been fun. I mean, we've known each other for quite some time. We're both students, and I've been watching your career just grow, and it's been super fun. I'm really happy for you. And I know it's not just Riley Jensen. You've got a team under you now too.
We do. It started out with me, and now we have 2 other practitioners, Justine Jones and John Osborne, who are also mental performance coaches and sports psychology consultants for me. We went to school together, and as things grew and progressed, I've been able to hire some people. I have an assistant named Aisha Miley Tulua, who does a fantastic job for us. And we're just using all the tools that we talk about in our field, and trying to use, motivation and confidence and stress and anxiety management in our own ways with ourselves too. And it's really nice to have Justine and John around, because we can bounce ideas off of each other when we feel like we kind of like didn't do a great job in one of our, presentations or one of our individual appointments. We can talk through it, and we can work through some difficult things together as a team. And that's what helps us to be successful. It's been really, really fun. And they've done a great job of adding Westminster College to our portfolio. They've added some Salt Lake Community College teams, and we just work with all kinds of high school teams, college teams, pro athletes to help them, maybe from the neck up. They get lots of training from the neck down. We try and help them from the neck up.
Yeah. That's cool that you're doing organizations too, because, that's how Jimmy and I kind of got together. He was on the, sports performance, mental skills side, but it all applies to the organizations too. So.
Yeah, I think the unintended blessing or the unintended consequence of sports psychology is that these are also life skills, right? They're not, and people love to hear sports stories. And I guess it shouldn't have been surprising to me, because sports is a microcosm of life, right? We have wins and we have losses, we have failures, we have great peaks and great valleys in our jobs as well. And so when we can learn how to deal with that on the sporting field or on the court, it also transfers over to the, to the boardroom and to the sales field that we move into later in life.
I totally agree. Yeah. So I guess part of me is like, when you're dealing with organizations or one-on-one, is there a preference for you, or I'm kind of curious to know how you found yourself working with the teams and the individuals,
Yeah. So as far as the organization goes, even before I graduated, somebody asked me to come and speak at their company, and it was a real thrill for me to just see how that transfers over. I was really nervous about it. I don't think I've ever prepared for a presentation longer. It was a company called Wise Company, which is like an emergency preparedness company out of Utah here. And I remember I had a number in my head about what I was going to ask for. And I just asked them, I said, hey, what's your budget? And it was like 3 times more than what I had in my head. And so before I exploded with happiness and joy about being asked to come and speak to him, I just said, well, let me check on that. Let me see if that works out, and then
act cool.
Yeah, I was trying to act cool. No, I was doing everything I could to be cool, calm, and collected under pressure. Right?
Let me see how that pencils out.
Right? And then before I could call him back, I said, I'll give you a call back in a couple hours. Before I could call back, he threw in like a year's supply of like emergency preparedness stuff. And I just hurried and called him back before this got out of control. I was like, hey, we'll be able to make this work. This is going to be good. This is going to be really good. Right. And that's kind of how it started. So it started out with me just speaking to companies, and I love to speak to companies. It's something that still to this day gives me a lot of satisfaction to speak with companies and to do large group meetings. But then I got asked to speak to the Utah Jazz sales group, and I spoke to them about 4 times. And then he's like, hey, and the way this formulated with me is like, hey, do you think that you'd ever be able to come and meet individually with like our team on performance and sales goals and leadership and these things that you talk about with athletes? Do you think that would work? And I'm like, well, I kind of think it would. Like, should we sign like a contract for 6 months and see how it goes? He goes, yeah, that's perfect. He goes, put it together. And the rest has been history. We've had numerous companies that we've worked with. Some have gone away, some have come in, some are being pitched right now, but we work both on the team level and individual level with companies, just like we do with our teams.
Right.
And we talk to them about their stresses, their anxieties, their goal setting opportunities, their leadership opportunities. And Now I've been with the Jazz since 2018, so we're at 6 years now. The interesting thing that's evolved into now is that they're sending them to me when they think this is a person that is a candidate for leadership that needs to develop some more tools. And so I'll meet with them for 6 times before they get promoted, right? And so it's been
fantastic. Yeah.
kind of a cool opportunity. And it was really the genesis of Chris Barney, who's the CRO of the Utah Jazz, that's kind of created a platform for me to like spread our business to other places as well. And I think that's how a lot of businesses start is, people say, well, can you do this? And you're like, oh, actually, I do think I can do that. Right. Like, I think that would be great. And, you start fulfilling a need and you start seeing how that works. And it's been really fun for us. It's been a really cool, I get just as much a rush out of helping somebody who's in the workplace to fulfill their dreams and their objectives in the workplace as I do with a college athlete who gets a starting position and now is, playing really, really good football at Utah State University. So they're all equally rewarding to me.
Right on. No, I love that. That's kind of very much aligned with Aaron and Dre and I, where we just trying to make the world a better place to work. And we use a lot of these same skills. Like you said, it doesn't matter if they're 50 or 9 years old, it all applies. So it's just been fantastic.
Yeah.
Right.
I just imagine, the commercials from many years ago, the Super Bowl commercials where they got the football player in the office and he's running and like diving and tackling people.
Yeah.
I just think, like some people think in sports psychology in the workplace, you're making people do push-ups and stuff, but no, it applies. It directly applies. It's the mental skill side,
all
right?
from the neck up.
What was it, Terry Tate, office
Terry
linebacker?
Tate, that's right.
Yeah, there you go.
I love those commercials.
Yeah.
I'll have to show it to you, Dre.
Yeah.
It was this guy who was like, he would get mad at people for like leaving the coffee empty. And so then he would go and tackle them in the office.
He'd come in from the side of the screen.
There was consequences, physical consequences for not doing your job at work. So you stapled the paper too many times, and Terry Tate, office linebacker, was like,
comes and tackles
you out
across the office. Those were great commercials.
Oh yeah. So why don't we turn to the book? So do you want to tell us a little bit about the book? What why this topic, and what you want people to get out of the reading it?
Yeah. So the subtitle of the book is insights on bravery, courage, and vulnerability, right? And I think that's part of the reason why I wrote the book, right? Is because it took a little bit of bravery and courage and vulnerability for me because, who am I to write a book? Who do you think you are, Riley? Who do you think you are to like impart wisdom to the rest of this world? And there was 2 reasons, well, maybe 3 reasons that I wrote the book. Number one, I'm not very good at journaling. I'm not very good at writing. And I'm a little bit older, and I have an 11, a 9-year-old, and a 4-year-old child. Two girls and a boy, and I thought, man, what would be a better way than to like wrap my thoughts into a place where maybe when I'm gone in hopefully 30 years or 40 years, right, that they can read through it and go, oh yeah, you know what, this kind of encapsulates what Dad thought of different things, right? So that was the first thing. The second thing is just the thought process of continual improvement and continual growth, right? Like I wanted to put paper to pen and just kind of like organize my own thoughts. Jimmy, I know you, I don't know Aaron and Drea as well, but like sometimes we're like nutty professors, right? Like we have all these thoughts and you can get me on a topic and I can go and I can talk about it, but is there any
company? You're in good company with these two.
See, our background, it used to be a whiteboard, the entire wall. I was trying to map out all my thoughts about all these different books and theories. And,
Right. And so there was an effort there to just organize my thoughts that I thought would be helpful to me and give it a little bit rhyme to my reason and give a little bit of organization to my nuttiness. And then thirdly, I was just like, man, working with hundreds and hundreds of corporate and student athletes, I'm just surprised at the amount of people that are struggling with confidence. And so the book is about confidence. It's confidence building for your child. It's confidence building for your athlete. It's confidence building for your employee. And most importantly, it's confidence building for you. You know, all of these things that we talk about in sports psychology, you know, we talk about perfectionism, or we talk about comparison, or we talk about autonomy, but all of these things are designed to build confidence at the end of the day. And, you know, we all have something that we're really good at. Every single one of us has something that we're really good at. And I see this in the weight rooms, right? Like when I was in college, there was always one guy that was really good at bench, or there was one guy that was really good at squat. There was another guy that was really good at power clean. Everybody in this life has something to give to this world. And I think that if we're vulnerable, I think if we're brave, I think if we're courageous, we can get that to come out of us and really benefit those that are around us. And isn't that what it's about? I mean, sure, we all have jobs. Sure, we're out there trying to slay dragons and take care of our families, but isn't it really about building up other people and giving them the confidence that they need, and building other people up so that you feel good about yourself? I mean, I can't tell you how just rewarding and beneficial this job has just been to me personally, because it's kind of like a helping paradox. Like by helping others, you help yourself. And then you become like, kind of like greedy about helping yourself by helping others. It's like this, it's this really, really weird paradoxical circle of helping others helps you, and then helping others helps you. And then it's like, well, I'm really just kind of trying to help Jimmy out because I like to help myself out. Right. And so it's just a great feeling and a great thing. I've actually had people sending me like notes that they've underlined lately in the book. And that's been really, really fun. I'm going to do a little bit of just a little bit of marketing with that. Like, oh, Riley, I really liked this part of your book, and they have it underlined. And that's extremely gratifying. It's extremely gratifying. Now, there's going to be people that are critical. I even wrote in the book that I get nervous about other sports psychology or consultants or mental performance coaches like being critical of it. And that'll happen. It's going to happen. But if I'm not going to go to them for advice, I probably shouldn't take their criticism either. I should probably just move on with life.
No, I love that. I mean, everything in the book is the stuff that we studied and stuff that we use to, you know, help our clients or our employees or athletes. And I think it all applies. And so I enjoyed what I got out of it. And it was just really cool to see, you know, somebody put themselves out there, because I have those same questions, like, who am I to write a book, right? Who am I to get my, you know, but so I share those, you know, those concerns with you. But I think, you know, anybody that reads it is going to get a lot out of it, especially if they don't, you know, never been exposed to any of it before. So,
well, Jimmy, you and we talked offline a while ago, and we kind of connected over our little league football teams, right?
Yes, yeah.
It's amazing how much this works for a 9-year-old to take, you know, Dr. Huberman's double breath technique into consideration, or, you know, to do a little progressive muscle relaxation before a game. It's amazing to see how open a 9-year-old is to this. And then I think for me, what was rewarding is that a 9-year-old can like understand enough, and you can break this down, you can simplify this enough that a 9-year-old can understand it and feel the power of relaxation before a game. They can feel the power of a deep breath in a stressful moment. And that's been really fun for me too, right? Just with my little league football team, we're in the huddle, we're in a stressful moment. I'm like, all right, guys, deep breath. You know, and we're doing it together in the huddle.
I was so happy to hear you say that you do that, because I was like the lone wolf on the field doing that with my football team. I tell Aaron and Dre about it all the time, and to hear that you're doing the same thing, which was fantastic. It was really, you know, just kind of validating everything I've been doing, and we know it works. And I've been criticized my first year, going back 3 years ago, with doing this. And one of the parents said, you know, we're going into a playoff game, and he's like, that team over there is running plays before the game, and we're over here doing yoga. What the hell? You know?
I certainly think nobody's said it to me yet, but I certainly think people have thought that.
Well, this parent told me a year later that he was thinking that, because now he was out there breathing with us, because he realized it really works. Right. So he was just kind of sharing how he was converted, but that's exactly what he was thinking. But But no,
Right.
and that 9-year-old will take those breathing skills. You would hope, as they continue to get older and face more anxiety, more challenges throughout their life, and that those skills still apply.
Towards the end of the season, one of my players was like, "Coach, you need to take a deep breath," and I did. Like, it was one of those points where I'd forgotten, right? And it was like,
That's awesome.
yeah, hold on.
Right on.
Yeah, that's like when your employee calls you out and like,
Yeah.
Right.
hey, you've been preaching this for a while. Maybe you should.
Try your own stuff.
Well, my wife has called me out on a ton of stuff. It didn't hurt as bad from a 9-year-old as it does from my wife, though.
Yeah.
Mr. Embrace the suck, don't stay in the suck. Why are you lamenting right now, Riley? Right? Like,
You're shitting all over yourself right now.
yeah, why are you shitting all over the place? What's the problem with you, right? So,
Yeah, I think I'd heard that before, but I like that.
Yeah.
Remembering that the shitting all over yourself.
from the book, yeah,
In the book. Yeah, that's funny.
I think that's I didn't know who to give that credit to, Jimmy, because there's so many sports psychology people that say that. So
Yeah.
No, yeah, no. It's hard. I mean, there's a lot of things. You had some references to some academic journals, but like the story of going to get the oranges. The two employees. I know I've read that in other books and heard that story, but I don't know where it came from.
Yeah, a lot of it's just tribal knowledge, really.
Right.
Even control the controllables, and we hear that we grow up, and learn.
Yeah.
I don't know who's actually credited for saying it, but it all, these are great.
Yeah.
yeah. Hey, Jimmy, you'll like this story. So I had a pretty predominant sports psychology consultant for a major baseball team yell at me because I tweeted out "control the controllables," that she owned that, and I was like, "Oh, come on, come on, that's tribal, man. Like,
Yeah.
there's nobody I can give that to. Like, come on, like, I'm not taking credit for it. I was just like, so
Just sharing it.
But she was, I guess.
I guess she was. I don't know if she got a copywritten or trademarked. I don't know.
I don't know,
Probably
but
not.
it was
Probably not.
that was an interesting conversation. I definitely apologized and tried to move on, but I don't think it went well.
Wow.
So that's why I was a little bit vulnerable, writing a book. It's like, how do I give everybody credit that deserves credit? So, I guess one disclaimer that I'd give is I really tried hard in this book to give people credit who I needed to give credit to. And, on the things that are tribal, I hope that people understand that, it's been heard in a lot of different places. And I just didn't know who to give credit to.
Right on.
Yeah.
I mean, Dre, you're in a lot of books. Have you ever had a problem with that?
Yeah.
People come after you saying, I wrote that first.
Yeah. You can't claim it. What I liked about his book was that Riley, I like the fact that you gave credit to some of the more academic ideas. Example was SDT, and the three what they're called needs, psychological needs. I think when you do that, it anchors your stuff and enables you to say, well, some of that can be found here. If you want to go a little further with it, here's what you might do. In fact, that's one question I'd like to ask you about your book. When all's said and done, what are some of the sort of things you want people to have in their minds, or what are some of the choice, simple things you want them to bring into their lives?
So I think one of the things that I've learned over the years of me being a practitioner and talking to people about confidence and different things is that, and I think Ken Ravizza was really good at talking about this, and I think Joe Madden, the manager, I think he had T-shirts made that just said "Do simple better," right? Like, I think that sometimes we overwhelm ourselves in this world with all this information. And honestly, there's never been more access to information in this world than today. But that can also be overwhelming, right? Like, it's the same reason when you get dropped off in a desert that it's overwhelming. It's not because there's no choice. It's because there's so many choices that could be wrong, right? And so when you have all these choices, sometimes it's just, if you can just do the simple things better, right? It's not about adding more to your workload. It's maybe that you're already doing a whole bunch of things really well. Maybe you just keep doing those things a little bit better and a little bit more consistently. I think that's an important concept that comes up over and over in the book. I also think that something that's come up for me when it comes, negative self-talk just seems to be really, really prevalent in everybody. I think one of the things that came up in there that has really resonated with some of my clients is catastrophizers, meaning when we use words that are extreme, like always and never, or everybody and nobody, or every time. I mean, you think about the fights that you get in with your siblings or your loved ones or your significant other. We dip into that really quick. You always say that. You're always nagging me. Why? You never come through in the clutch. And we get into these like really, really significantly exaggerated words, and they're seldom true, right? Like there's almost never, and I'm trying to take away from that word, almost never, truth to those exaggerated words, to those catastrophizers. And if we can just move a little bit away from those, it's like in Dumb and Dumber where Lloyd says, what are the chances of a guy like me getting with a girl like you? And she says, 1 in a million. He's like, so you're saying there's a chance, right? And that's what we do when we move away from those catastrophizers. We're saying, okay, it does happen often. There's still a chance for me. There's still hope. There's still an opportunity for me. And I think that's what moving away from catastrophizers does, is it gives us hope. And then that would be the third thing, is just that rat story from 1958 where they took rats to exhaustion and then pulled them out and gave them an emotional hug, right? Like toweled them off, said, you can do this. And then those rats go, instead of 15 minutes, they go for 60 hours. If rats are affected by an emotional hug, if you will, think about how much further that can take us together if we can build up confidence and hope in other people. It just becomes really, really impactful in our daily lives. So those are the three things that really kind of stand out to me: the power of hope, the power of like lessening our catastrophizing language, and then simplifying. I guess if I'm, trying to break those three things down, those resonate with me, and they seem to really resonate with my clients.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I didn't see in your book was the connection between emotion and cognition, or the connection between how you feel and what you think, and getting people to understand that what you feel comes before what you think. People don't understand that connection. And
well, I might push back a little bit. I tried to talk about it a little bit, but I think that might be something that comes in the next book. But I did talk about the fact that we get a download of emotions, right? That it downloads into our system, and that we do have a choice on how we react to our emotions. And that's where the cognition comes. I think that's a great idea for another podcast, right? For us to talk about that. But I talked about Chadron, and where he talks about when those chemicals download into us, it takes about 60 seconds to download those chemicals into our system. But then we have a choice to keep those emotions alive, or we have a choice to move on from those. And that's where I ended up talking about Viktor Frankl a little bit, and that
creating space. Yeah,
it's not easy. It's not easy for us to control our emotions, but the cognition or the reaction to that is super important. And I think when we can react in a good way, and Viktor Frankl talks about that in stimulus plus response equals outcome, when we can choose our reaction wisely, it seems to really influence the outcome. And that, to me, that is that cognition that you're talking about. To me, that is, and I think that could be a whole book rather than just a few paragraphs that I mentioned. But I agree with you 100% that cognition and our reaction to the emotions that we have or the feelings that we have are super vital and super important to our progress, to our happiness, and to our confidence.
Do you give them any exercises that will help them begin to sort some of that?
So I talked about acceptance commitment therapy in the book. I think that there's a real power for us, for all of us, to not stoke the fires of those emotions by just recognizing the emotion, labeling the emotion, and sitting in the emotion for a moment. And that can be really, really powerful, to just recognize and not add on to the emotion that you're feeling. Now, I mentioned earlier, embrace the suck, don't stay in the suck, from the military. I do think it's important to set maybe a time limit for yourself for how long you're going to sit in an emotion, especially if it's problematic, right? Like frustration or sadness or some of those things, to try and set a time limit for how long you're going to sit in that feeling. But it's amazing to me how you can really let the embers burn out when you just accept the feeling that you're having and let those embers kind of burn themselves out and then move forward with life, rather than constantly trying to fight or wrestle against those feelings. Sometimes it's just important to recognize them and label those feelings so that you can move forward. And I think that's acceptance commitment therapy is a real key to overcoming some of the emotions that we feel, because they're strong and they're there for a reason. They drive us for a reason. But when we can manage them a little bit better, then maybe those emotions don't take over our amygdala, and we can activate our frontal lobe a little bit and start making executive decisions that are helpful to us rather than hurtful.
Yeah, I mean, it's super important. I know for working with the little ones, that those emotions, they don't know what to do with them, right? They don't even, let alone try and label them. So as long as we can, again, talking like the younger 9, 10-year-olds, just helping them understand what those emotions are and that it's okay to feel that. that right there has an immense impact on the performance and their well-being. And I sometimes think adults can need that too as well.
I was going to say 9-year-olds or 49-year-olds, right? Like when I start to feel emotions and I'm mad at myself because I got mad. Right now, I'm just keeping that emotion alive. Like that's kind of a silly thing to do. Like, oh, I shouldn't have got mad. What the freak is wrong with me? What's going on with me? I got to stop this, right? And I'm now dumping logs on the fire instead of just allowing it to be. Okay, I did get mad. Why did I get mad? Well, maybe because I didn't cut it off at the pass with some breathing techniques here, or with this, or with acceptance commitment therapy. And that's how we head off some of our anger is to like maybe catch it early, right? And use some of these techniques that we talk about in the book to head it off at the pass before we get too far down the road.
No, right on. Totally agree.
Well, I think that's, Drea, where you were kind of going, right? Is it's a lot of it is how you think about and process those emotions and what you do with it, which I agree. I think the biggest theme through the book that I saw was just that language and communication, right? How the shoulding and the negative self-talk and the extreme words, that just it linked through every chapter pretty much was, a big important thing, which, that's not as big in like organizational behavior psychology. It's much more, I think, prevalent on the sports psychology side.
But when we're talking like one-to-one context, I think a lot of that, having that knowledge and helping share that with those,
it's super important. Yeah. I think it's good, which maybe that's why.
I was primarily trying to get at people. I like to see people separate what they think is or what they feel and what they think, and sometimes what I feel, I don't know where I got it. And how do I begin to make it not go away, but how can I let it sit as you were talking about, but more importantly, then what do I substitute, or what do I put there that's more meaningful and more permanent and more sticky in terms of my priorities that are important. So when you start talking about somebody like who has very prominent values, whose values are, and they're thought about, they're examined. Where did I get that? How is that a value to me? And what is it that I'm clinging to? Is it the feeling I have about that, or is it the thing that I think becomes really important to me? And so when you start looking at the SDT stuff, choice, that you had a section there, choice, that's cognitive stuff, and it's saying, okay, where did that come from? What do you really value about that? So when you talk about athletes really being, what am I doing? Am I doing it for the money? Am I clear about that? What is that something I really? Where did that come from? And what's a better substitute for it? So I think that the SDT stuff that you mentioned, and of course you mentioned a lot of theory. I think you skip lightly over some of the stuff that if you decide to write a second book, will enable you to really do them justice. Because I think we have values that we think are values, and they're not. There are things that are developed. There's a difference between a developed value and a programmed value. And so getting people to understand that gives them a chance to let that go.
That's some deep stuff right there, Dre. I like where you're going with that. I recently just had a talk with some Weber State coaches. I won't say which sport because I don't want to, I don't want to frustrate anything. But what they're doing right now with their team and what they're working on is establishing what their values are and separating emotion from thought processes. And then the part that I added in, and I think I read this in a book by Sean Acor. I think it's called The Happiness Advantage. I think I got this from there. But he just talks about once you know what your principles and values are, you're much happier when you live in that circle, right? When you live in that circle, it's typically when we feel anxious or out of sorts or out of balance in our life is if number one, if we don't have delineated principles and values, right? And then number two, once we do have them, that we live inside of them. And some people's circle are going to be here, some is here, some is here, some is here. Doesn't matter what your circle of values are or your principles and values are, but typically you need to live within those values and principles to have the confidence and the happiness and the self-determination theory and all the things that you want out of your life. And he gives a really good example in there of somebody who was an indie rocker that was at his facility who became really, really big and went on tour and made millions of dollars, but he didn't like it. It wasn't inside of his principles and values. It wasn't inside of like where he wanted to live. And he said, if I told you this guy's name, you'd all know who he is, but he only does like 3 or 4 concerts a year now. He's back to being an indie rocker and he's much more in balance in his life because he realized that being a superstar wasn't what he was ever searching for.
Yes.
Creating good music and living within his values.
And those values are interconnected. So it's not just I'm making a choice about my values. I'm making a choice that connects me to other people, so that the issue of what my choice is fundamental to other people. I can't do it just for me. I have to do it for something larger than me, which is what that connection. That I think you called it a choice, and then the second was a competence, and the third was connection. It wasn't connection.
Yeah.
I forgot.
I choose, I believe, I belong, but it's basically that's self-determination theory, right?
Yes. The point I was making was that they're not mutually exclusive if you're going to be passionate. My work in the last 20 years in research has been the difference between obsessive passion and what I might call harmonious passion. It's not separate. If I can do things that will be very healthy for me, I can do things that are very detrimental to my self-concept or it could be either my confidence or my competence. And those things are usually disconnected to the other larger questions of others. So what you do to others, you do to yourself. And when that gets confusing, oftentimes people get out there and they're obsessive about it, but not healthy with it.
Right. Well, I think I mentioned the African proverb in my book. If I didn't, I say it all the time. But you want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go together. And that's talking about that connectedness. That's talking about that ability to make choices that connect you to your principles and values, not only a macro level, but a micro level. Right?
Sure.
That's like the story of the two, what is it? Tigers or something looking down at the field of cows or buffalo or something.
No. He's going with a joke now.
Right? No, it's not a joke.
It's not a joke.
I got lots of jokes. We got lots of jokes, but that's not a joke.
Oh, you have to tell me. I thought there was just a bull and a young bull and an old bull.
Oh yeah,
That's what I thought you were going with.
But I don't want to go there.
No. You told me this one time. You said there were, I forget. Oh, it's maybe as a kid and his dad, and they were hunting a bull down in the field, and there's hundreds of bulls down there, and the kid's like, "Hey, I'm going to run down there and I'm going to get me one of those, and shoot it." And then the dad said, "How about we walk down and we get all of them?"
Yep.
Right. Which is a little different than the group belonging
a bit outside.
I thought of it. But I think that's good advice.
No, I agree with that advice.
And it's
I
similar.
I was thinking of
belonging.
another joke. I apologize. I was thinking of another joke.
A hippo and a zippo.
All right. So we keep going on and on.
You know what the difference is? You know what the difference between a hippo and a zippo is?
I don't.
A zippo is a little lighter.
Yeah.
That was good.
So do you have a question?
No, go
Okay.
ahead.
So I was going to ask, Jimmy and I both, Drea's written books. Jimmy and I are both kind of in the process of going through it. I'm curious, what was your experience? What were the ups and downs, and, what are your takeaways and advice?
I think the best move that I made, I talked about writing a book for like 6-7 years. I wrote it in about a year. The best move that I made was I hired an editor who kind of kept my feet to the fire. That was probably the best thing that I did, where, we put the skeleton together of the book, we put the outline together, and then she said, "Okay, I need the introduction by this date," and then the introduction would be messy and we would fix it. You know what I mean? Okay, chapter 1, we're talking about this, chapter 5, perfectionism. I got to have all your thoughts together by this date, right? Now, the difficulty of the writing the book was not, do I have enough? It's like, what do I take out, right? And just like Drea was mentioning, like, I probably could have gone a little bit deeper on cognition and emotion, right? But
Sure.
I had to make decisions on what I was leaving in and leaving out, right? And that was the harder part, was taking out things, taking out stories, taking out anecdotes that I thought were really good. It was kind of like a part of me died, right? It was like, but then I just had to tell myself, well, maybe that can find its place into another book. So I think the thing that happened with me writing a book was, one, was a huge accomplishment. It was very, very hard. It was very hard for me to stay on task. And if I hadn't hired the editor to do that, I don't think I would have. And then number 2, I definitely think that there'll be a few more books in my lifetime. I don't think
Good for you.
So it wasn't so awful
Good
that
for
you don't
you.
want to do it again.
No, I think there's things that I want to explore. I think
Right.
the next book will be called Love Your Guts, and it'll explore. It'll explore some different aspects. Maybe we'll throw a little bit more of the cognition and emotion in there. Maybe we'll talk about, just how much that self-determination theory, achievement goal theory, some of these theories can affect. You need to love your own guts, and you need to have and you need to have people around you that love your guts, so that you can get to where you want to go.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, and getting into values. This book was definitely kind of an overview. I mean, you hit a lot of theories, from self-determination theory to resilience to mindset, Dweck stuff, and shame and vulnerability, and all kinds. You kind of go through it, and it's each one of those topics has multiple books written about, just those. So it's hard. I imagine it's hard to balance, how deep do you go where, you're what we say, you're saying your truth to power, right? And saying what you think is important, what you want people to hear without, balancing that depth. That's good.
I love your guts. I think that's fantastic. You just got me excited when you said that. I think that's a great.
It's one of the things that I say to all my clients and to my coaches, and I didn't realize that it had kind of a mental toughness aspect to it. I've just always said that since in my 20s, instead of saying I love you, maybe that felt too intimate for me. So I was like, hey, I love your guts, man. I love your guts.
Is that what you told your wife on the?
Well, I didn't tell her that. I was smart enough. There's some cerebellum left in me that didn't do that. But
that wasn't in your vows.
No, but the softball coach at Weber State, she's like, I love that. That's like mental toughness. And I was like, oh, I hadn't even thought of that. Right? Like, I love your guts. She goes, you're influencing me to continue my guts. And I was like, oh no, I was just telling you I love your guts. Like, I really love your guts. But she's like, I like it. It's kind of a play on what you do. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess it is. So I think that'll be the next book.
Do you think, by the way, Riley, that there is a machismo float through a lot of athletics that and the word toughness is sort of something we've been trying to get men to temper in certain ways. Stop it with the toughness. Sometimes the toughness doesn't like what's going here.
Tougher to be vulnerable than anything.
Yeah.
No, I can't tell you how many times that I've had young men in front of me that I've told them that I love them and that I'm here for them and that I'm here to help them succeed, where they just break down and start crying and like, this is the first man that's ever told, you're the first male figure that's ever told me that. And I'm surprised. I'm also lucky that I had a father that told me that a lot. And I'm not trying to say that, like, but I think even with a father and a mother that told me that they loved me a lot, I still masked a lot. I masked myself a lot when I was in college, and I'm still recovering from that and working through that. But you better believe I'm going to tell my son that I love him, and you better believe that I'm going to tell the people that I work that I love them, because they need to hear it and they need to get comfortable with it, because we need to do that more.
Yeah, they need to believe it. Not so much to love that you love them, but they should be loving themselves, and it's okay to be weak. And so those things creep into the whole idea of, I don't know. I best way I can say it is there's testosterone running through that just hey, wait a minute. Yeah. Wait a minute. The other thing is I don't know how much you've done. I didn't pick it up in the book, but I didn't read the whole book, so that's not a fair statement. But it's the whole issue of how do you stop and literally hold in suspension your feelings? How do you mindfully have a blank a reaction to something, so that it allows the cognition to be breathing enough to try all alternatives. I think what happens, unfortunately, is a lot of reactions and it's probably connected to Csikszentmihalyi's stuff on zone. You don't want to stop and analyze it, because if you do, you're out of the zone.
Yeah.
And so that kind of stuff just it disturbs the possibility of new thoughts, So having a place to be able to say, now, can you just hold that in abeyance for a minute? Just breathe. Which I know you've done with your kids, because I've seen you do it, and stop and say, how did that feel? You relaxed, and it's that's why I'm saying separating affect from cognition is really imperative in certain times.
So one of
Jimmy,
the things, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, Jimmy, you've probably done this before, but there's times where I meet with people individually and I'm like, hey, are you okay if we just do a headspace session really quick? And they're like, what's headspace? And I'm like, just millennial meditation. Are you okay if we just take 10 minutes to
millennial ways?
Well, that's what I call headspace, calm, breathe. Some of these new apps that are coming out, because it's not like you're laying on a mat and getting in an Om position, but you're taking a few minutes to listen to someone who walks you through some breathing and some thinking to just calm yourself down a little bit. And it's an amazing tool to just sit in your feelings for a minute and just kind of like, I guess what you're saying, Drea, and if I'm understanding correctly, just kind of separate your emotions from your cognition. And when you can separate those a little bit, now you can make good decisions with your cognition to move forward.
Knowing that with the feeling you have is a psychological disturbance. It's not a thought. Clearly looking at alternatives and examining and breathing in the possibilities that you didn't think of before. So that it's sort of not. I used to have a monk taught me how to meditate, and he said the mind is like a boiling pot, and it just keeps bubbling up from the bottom. And if you don't watch it, you're clinging to the bubbles. You're not letting them go and let them pass. And so it's a form of mindfulness that you can get to easily and purposefully. That's why we keep coming back to the separation between affect and cognition, because I think we end up labeling, for example, something like anger is a higher order thought, even though I don't like it. For example, in order to be angry, you have to have an object to the anger. Some people just get angry and never mind why they're angry. They don't sense it, and so they end up playing recklessly, or they doing things that are not effective for them, and they become the slave of the obsessive idea they have without any understanding of it.
So where I see a lot of that at, and you can relate to this, Riley, is when you have the younger athletes, it's not just helping them, or you help them by helping the parents. So that car ride home, where there's a lot of emotion just occurred after a performance or after an event, and they want to fix it. Good or bad performance, the parents want to talk and fix it. And they just need to sit there and in that car ride home and let the child process what just occurred, good or bad. Because sometimes the kids are trying to figure it out and they don't want to talk. And so teaching parents how to sit there in that emotion or sit there and allow that dissipation to occur is super important, because whatever they say, the kid's mostly charged. They're not going to hear it. And so, yeah, I think that's where I spend a lot of time is helping parents.
Well, the parents are often emotionally charged.
Oh,
Sure.
Sure.
So I call it, don't turn your car into a coffin, right?
I like that. Yeah.
Don't talk. Don't
turn the car into a coffin.
Oh my God.
Don't turn your car into a coffin on the ride home, right? And look, my wife's read my book, but she gets tired of my stuff. But we had an experience the other night with my 9-year-old. They're up 28-25 in a basketball game. He's throwing the ball inbounds and he threw it away, right? And so the team had the ball right underneath his baskets. Now his team lucked out a little bit. They didn't make their shot with 3 seconds to go. They still win the game. There's a deep sigh of relief, but my wife was wound up. Right. She was wound up about it. She started going into it on the car. I had to text her. I'm like, "Hun, right now is not the time. Please, let's just wait.
Nice.
Let's wait until some emotions have passed." And we did. And so that was 2 days ago. And then yesterday night, when we got home, we had a great conversation with him about the game. And he was able to take some constructive criticism. He was able to sort out some of his emotions. Mm-hmm. My wife was able to sort out some of her emotions, but it was explosive. If we had continued in that car, it was going to ignite, and I could feel it. And
you start burning some bridges right there. So no, that's
I was so grateful for some of the training that I'd received for that moment, because I've seen it blow up in my own family before on the car ride home. Right, like there's a lot of emotion that goes into the sports and to the things that we're passionate about. And we have to be careful with those emotions and let them dissipate a little bit so that we can think clearly and make good decisions, right?
100%.
There's one other area when I was reading, I thought you were going there, but I don't think you did, was with deliberate practice, Erickson's stuff. And so I don't know, as you guys were talking, I was thinking about how, the emotion versus cognition piece fits in with deliberate practice, and maybe that's as you in the practice time when you're working on the skills and trying to work the skills versus flow when you're performing or in the game.
I think deliberate practice and intentional practice is part of that whole idea of do simple better, right? Like when you can be a little bit more deliberate or a little bit more purposeful or a little bit more intentional about what it is that you're trying to do today in practice or what it is that you're trying to do today at work, that's keep it simple better. That's doing simple better, right? Like you're focusing on one thing that you can get better at today. And I think that becomes incredibly impactful to our performance, because I think there's two things that happen. Number one, we've simplified and we can give ourselves a clear delineation. Did I get better at this today or did I not get better at this today? And if you string a couple of days in a row of I did get better at my second serve today because I worked really hard on it, well, that builds confidence up. And now when you need to go into your backhand and you need to work on your backhand, you have a little bit of confidence because you have a history of I was able to solve this problem of my second serve by being deliberate about it. Now I have a history or confidence that I can move on to the next thing and do the same thing and be deliberate about my backhand. Then I can be deliberate about my forehand. And pretty soon you have this well-oiled machine of tennis player that's playing really, really good tennis because you started small and deliberately in the beginning.
Right on.
Good.
Perfect.
Well, Riley, is there any other thoughts or comments you want to make as part of we're kind of as we
keep writing, Riley?
Yeah.
Keep writing.
Thank you, Drea. It's been a pleasure to meet you. You took this a little deeper than I was ready for. I'm not quite as deep as you. I was on my toes today. So.
I like your toes.
I think there's two things that I'll leave you guys with. One is you don't need permission to be great. Sometimes in life, I waited around waiting for a coach to bestow it upon me, a teacher or a professor to bestow it upon me. You don't need permission to be great. Just go be great today. Like go give your best effort and put your best work forward, whether it's a 9-year-old soccer team or a 52-year-old rodeo guy. Just put your best foot forward. And then I just love what the Stoics talked about. I love what Ryan Halliday's doing with some of his stoicism. One of my favorite phrases that's been really impactful for me lately is it's never as bad as it seems and it's never as good as it gets. And that keeps me going every day. It's never as bad as it seems and it's never as good as it gets. And I think sometimes we put a lot of value on a bad day. You know, and it's like my mom used to say when I was young, did you really have a bad day or did you have a bad 5 minutes and you milked it for the rest of the day, right? I think we could do a little bit better job of not milking a couple of minutes during the day and turning it into a bad day. We could just say, you know what, it's not as bad as it seems. I'm going to keep working hard because I think there's good things to come. So
that's fantastic.
Go for it, bro.
I'm going to steal that from your mom. I'll give her credit.
Did you really have a bad day, Riley? Or did you have a bad 5 minutes and you've been milking it all day?
Yeah. Hey, Riley, thank you so much for joining. This has been fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm
enjoyed it.
You made my day. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
Don't let this happen.
Dude,
again.
I'm all charged up, man. I'm intrinsically motivated.
Right on.
I'm intrinsically first motivated right now.
Yeah, there you go. So we always end our podcast.
He's slick. He's selling.
Yeah.
Well, we can talk about the name real quick. Intrinsic first. Everything starts from within, right? That's kind of where we go with that. And that's exactly
We
right.
thought intrinsic's most important too, is like kind of a double meaning.
Absolutely.
Put
100%.
it first.
So
Absolutely.
Aaron's about to ask you for a joke.
Well, I was just I don't. Anybody can go out, but we always like to end our podcast with a joke. So I don't know if you have it. I will invite you if you have a good joke. We'd love to hear it. But
So I'm kind of into knock jokes with my kids lately.
All right,
Sure.
Let's hear it.
Knock.
Who's there?
Hawaii.
Hawaii who?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
It's Hawaii.
How are you?
How are you?
How are you?
Go to your room. Go to your room right now.
Hey, thanks,
That's all
Riley.
I got, man. I'm not good with jokes.
No, that was perfect.
That's good.
Right
Take
on.
care. Keep
Thanks.
writing.
Yeah.
Congrats! You made it to the end of the episode. Thanks for tuning in. We genuinely hope that you found value in our conversation. If you liked it, please click that like button below and subscribe so that you can stay up to date on our current episodes. And if you didn't like it, you can click the dislike button, but make sure you click it twice. We're eager to hear from you, whether it's your thoughts, questions, topic ideas, or if you're interested in our leadership training and consulting support. Leave us a comment below or reach out to us directly at info@intrinsicfirst.com. We're open to any and all feedback. Thanks again for joining us. We look forward to having you back for more insightful leadership discussion. Until next time,